exchange for arms. And Clinton, they chose Arkansas because Bill Clinton was the most corrupt governor.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he was providing the security, the state cops security. So when it was unraveling, what they did to him was they put him in like a halfway house. They knew the cartel wanted him dead, so they made it so he couldn't have any weapons. They gave his address out through the court, and the cartel had people in the court watching the hearings. So they finished the job. But when he was found, his corpse, he had George H.W. Bush's phone number on his body when they found the corpse. So the government facilitated it through the mafia, as they often do. And there's a world where government and the mafia coexist.
Well, you see, if I can, sorry, did I cut you off? Or
No.
If I can bring in a tangent to that, you mentioned Felix Rodriguez, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Felix Rodriguez. So a point I brought back earlier, right, is if you look at the regime change specialists, you can find them, from one regime change to the next. And Felix Rodriguez was prominent in Vietnam, and he's the person with David Morales who eliminated Che Guevara, right? And so, when you talk about regime change or ZR rifle or, it's amazing how you see a number of these people's names come back who are persons of interest in the JFK assassination. The other thing with Felix Rodriguez is when E. Howard Hunt, is in jail because of the Watergate Commission, and eventually his wife died mysteriously, E. Howard Hunt's, in a plane crash, and you sense, is the person that the CIA may throw under the bus for the Kennedy assassination. And he eventually asks for money, otherwise he's going to speak. And it sounds certainly like he extorted money from, and one of the people he's involved with in that is Felix Rodriguez. So, these names just keep coming back, and then E. Howard Hunt, of course, is famous for his deathbed confession to his son that's on tape, and it describes something very close to ZR rifle.
So Mike wants to know, who was CIA agent Gary Underhill? Why was he afraid for his life and taken out in 1964?
Yeah, okay. You know what? That's apparently there's a file on Underhill that Jeff Morley's going to talk about this evening, where he made the claim after the assassination, to a few close people. He says, "Oh my God, I know what went down here." So his knowledge seems to have been what got him killed. Okay, so that and shortly after, he was taken out. Other than that, I don't know that much more about it, but I've read his story, like short capsules about his story. Now, apparently, according to Morley, we'll find something out about Underhill in the releases. Stay tuned, I guess. Maybe you have something. I don't know any. Is there anything else you would add to that? That's what I know about.
No. There's plenty more questions. So Susan wants to know, do the docs reveal details on the witnesses who died mysteriously afterward? And you have had a few questions come in about your thoughts on the amount of people, the strange deaths surrounding, in the aftermath.
Well, the first strange death is Lee Harvey Oswald. So here's the key witness, right? And think about this for a second, right? You have the worst security possible when Kennedy gets assassination. Open windows, you had the guy handling an umbrella, opening it up and down, and so very, very poor security that took place, and stand down orders at the airport and all sorts of things. I don't want to get into all the details, but even the Warren Commission criticizes the security. 2 days later, you have the number one witness, the guy you have to keep alive, right? So he can talk. and he's taken out in a basement by a mafioso. So once again, there's an excellent book that's been written by Paul Abbott about the Oswald assassination. It's the only book that I've ever read about the Oswald assassination, and it's fascinating. And it's fascinating how terrible the security was. So there's your, but what's notable is there are waves of assassinations. And when do these waves take place? Every time there's an inquiry. So, I mentioned Lee Harvey Oswald, then the Garrison inquiry comes up, and who dies conveniently? Some of his key witnesses, David Ferry and Eladio Del Valle. And then what happens during the HSCA? Oh, Giancana gets murdered. Rosselli is found cut up in pieces and floating in an oil drum in some Florida water bay. I'm not sure which one it is, and then Nicoletti is murdered. And then who else is murdered? George de Mohrenschildt, who was Oswald's friend. Just when Gaetan Fonzi was going to go and interrogate him, apparently committed suicide. Then you have, even during the ARB, when they were supposed to go and question Richard Case Nagel, I mean, that's a story in itself, he dies of a mysterious heart attack. So people say, well, how could a secret be kept so long? Well, the people who are going to reveal the secrets are, being intimidated, shot at, killed, and there are other people who weren't killed, but took bullets, like Vesiana. Vesiana took a shot, and he's the guy who claimed that he saw David Atlee Phillips talking with Oswald, and he saw them interacting. Then you had another guy, I'm trying to remember his name, but he went out with one of Jack Ruby's strippers, and he made a claim about Oswald, that got him to be shot in the head, and he survived. So, I fully believe that there's been witness intent. And by the way, during the Garrison, they formed a group called the Garrison Group. And one of their objectives was to turn witnesses and to intimidate them, and you name it. So, I think, I hope that answers the question, but I certainly think that this isn't all coincidental.
Michael's asking about the role of MI6 in this. If Dr. Coleman apparently has mentioned something about this.
The only thing I can say about MI6 is that when William Harvey and I think Jim Zangleton wanted to learn about executive action, they went and questioned MI6 and they questioned the French, because the Europeans had way more experience in intelligence than the Americans. In terms of the JFK assassination, I don't see any link.
Rhonda's asking about the Jim Garrison case. Was it Clay Shaw that helped kill JFK?
Okay, so here's what I will say about that. I don't know that Clay Shaw helped kill JFK or had him killed. I believe that Garrison was right. He pointed out that the relationship between Clay Shaw and Oswald was always denied until the HSCA came along and they said, you know what, there are too many witnesses that saw David Ferry, if not Clay Shaw, with Oswald. So if not, right? So it became much more plausible that Clay Shaw, all the research, I went through all the Garrison files, by the way. I've read 9,000 pages. And I certainly believe that there was a relationship between Clay Shaw and Oswald. Second thing is he was part of a very mysterious organization called Permindex. He was on the board of Permindex, which was a dirty tricks organization in Europe. And they're suspected of being involved in the funding for assassination attempts against de Gaulle, turning elections in Italy, and so on and so forth. It is definite that he had CIA clearance. He denied that, okay? Now, the thing, though, is that what was going on in New Orleans in 1963 may simply have been these people working with Oswald so he could do his fair play for Cuba committee activities and supposedly identify communists in New Orleans and maybe not really know for sure that there'd be an assassination coming. So what people did wittingly or unwittingly isn't always clear. So I certainly would not go to the point of saying that Clay Shaw, I'm convinced, was involved in the assassination plot. A lot of people think David Ferry may have been because he talked about triangularly short fire. It just seems to me that the people most likely involved are people out of JM Wave. And these are people who've done executive action many times. And these are the clandestine operators of the CIA. And I'm not talking, it may have been a rogue group, may have been a very small group that was acting as part of a task force for some other group. It's hard to know, but that's where I would look.
You're asking, Mrs. T wants to know whether Woody Harrelson's dad was one of the shooters.
This is, I find that picture of him, the three tramps, really resembles Woody Harrelson's father. And he was in jail, right, for assassinating a judge. And he made an admission of some type that he was involved in the assassination. Now, was he part of a hit team that could have acted down the road? Like, were there hit teams along the, was he actually one of the shooters? I really can't tell. But it's really interesting. I really see a resemblance. But, when you get into the whole resemblance and look, that picture looks like so-and-so and all that, that can so often play tricks on you that it's not like in Chokeholds, the book we wrote, we only write about the indisputable. So we wouldn't have something like that. We'd only cover things that, that have been corroborated and or have had multiple witnesses. Those are the only points we bring up. It's too dangerous to do something like that and, say based on resemblance, of a black and white photo. So that's what I would say about Harlson.
Susan wants to know whether you think Oliver Stone's film was accurate or not.
Well, okay. So first of all, this is interesting because I met Oliver. He came to Quebec City. The reason he came to Quebec City is because he invited me to be in the documentary film that came out 2 years ago called Through the Looking Glass. And I have a 5-minute role in there. I talk about prior plots to kill JFK. And that documentary is, it was written by Jim DiEugenio. It's fantastic. So for your audience, if you haven't seen that documentary, do look at it. Now, in terms of the movie JFK, there's some embellishment because I think he made a composite character using Donald Sutherland. But essentially, he's right on many, if not most of the points. He's right about Kennedy not wanting to go into Vietnam. That was heavily contested, but it's known for a fact. He was right about Clay Shaw having a relationship with the CIA. Now, you have to keep in mind that this isn't Oliver Stone's, it's not a movie about Oliver Stone's belief of the JFK assassination. It's a movie about Jim Garrison, his story, and it's based on The Trail of the Assassins. Excellent book. So he's telling Garrison's story. And I think it's quite accurate when I read the files and everything. Now, there might be, some contestable points and some errors, but, for what he had going with him, and this is before declassification, keep in mind. So the declassification, an awful lot that was declassified because of his movie, tends to corroborate a lot of things that he said. Will you find a couple of things that you say, this wasn't true or whatever? No, but the big picture is right.
So JR wants to know your thoughts on the mysterious deaths of reporters such as Dorothy Kilgallen.
What do I think of that one? Okay, well, that's the one I know of. So Dorothy Kilgallen was, a very popular television personality at the time. Did a lot of gossip columnists, but she was very professional and very thorough. And she, of course, interrogated Jack Ruby, right? She interrogated Jack Ruby, and she would have claimed that she could blow the case wide open, and she was going to. And then, the thing with her that's mysterious is, it has to do with her reading glasses. I forget exactly, I think she died without them, or she was near a book, and they said, well, there's no way she would have been reading that book without her reading glasses. Something along those lines, things of that effect. The other thing had to do with her makeup. There's something really strange in, so mark it down as another really strange death. Now, again, if you go on Kennedy's and King and you do the search bar, you'll have excellent articles on Dorothy Kilgallen.
Next question. Do you think Marilyn Monroe was used as a honeypot for JFK, which might have led to her demise? Maybe she knew too much?
No, I'm trying to remember the name of the person. Again, if you go on Kennedy's and King, the person who's researched the Marilyn Monroe the most that I know of has completely debunked the relationship between Marilyn Monroe and JFK. How did he do that? Is he looked at their travel itineraries, and they only match once. And apparently there may have been a fling in Bing Crosby's house, I think, or something like that. And that's how, but used as a honeypot, I don't think so. I think that he had many honeypots in that case. He's someone who was quite the womanizer. But he was a bit careless with that. Definitely there are some cases earlier on where he had a mistress that was involved in espionage, and that could have really harmed his career. But I don't think that's the case with Marilyn Monroe. And I can't say I'm a specialist on that, but again, go on Kennedy's and King and use a search, the search function to find the articles on Marilyn Monroe, and you're going to find this incredible author who Jim DiEugenio refers to, and is his go-to person when it comes to that.
Do you have time to answer a few more questions? I know we've just gone over an hour.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm happy. I'm not often in England, so it's a pleasure to be there.
Oh, thanks. So JR wants to know, is it true that the front kill shot came after the motorcade was already past the book depository, which means that the shot couldn't have come from the book depository?
Okay, so I'll try and answer that. Is she referring to the headshot? That
the front kill shot is the reference.
Okay. Yeah. So here's what you need to do is right this evening go on YouTube and look at the Zapruder film. Okay, and you'll see the whole assassination. And the first shot you can notice is when JFK brings his hands to his throat. Now, it's claimed by the Warren Commission that that's a shot from the back, except that the doctors at Parkland said they were in entry room. Okay, so that would be the first shot that hit him, but it's not that visible. The second thing you'll see is a delayed reaction in Connolly, the governor who's sitting in front of JFK being hit. So that bullet is what we call, is supposed to be the single bullet that injured both JFK and the passenger in front, Governor Connolly, who had 5 injuries because of that bullet, according to the single bullet theory. But you see by his reaction and by Connolly's own testimony that that's impossible. And then you'll see the headshot about 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds after. And that's where you see his head get hit and fall violently back. So that shot there, if you look at the splatter analysis, because the splatter went out backwards, and you make a link between the splatter and the headshot, it directs right to the grassy knoll. Someday, if ever you visit Daley Plaza, you will get an incredible, you'll see inch by inch, I'm exaggerating a bit here, what the dimensions are. And when you see the dimensions, you go up to the 6th floor and you see what the motorcade looked like. And then you go to the grassy knoll and you see the angle there. It's so revealing. So, I think the front shot definitely occurs after the motorcade passes the Texas School Book Depository to the point where Oswald would be behind for sure. And the shot that many people said they heard shots from the knoll. Now, some people did hear shots from the Texas School Book Depository. What likely happened was a crossfire, like probably at least three different shooters shooting from different angles. And that's why Daley Plaza was perfect. If you go there, you can see the different angles where you can get the vehicle and Kennedy into what they call a turkey shoot.
So Bailey wants to know your opinion of Castro's involvement in the failed Cuban coup.
The failed Cuban coup? Okay, so, is it like, is she referring to the Bay Pigs? Or
I think so. I think so, yeah.
Okay. Failed Cuban coup. Well, I mean, I don't know. You see, if she's referring to a coup against Kennedy, I don't think Castro was ever involved in an attempt to assassinate Kennedy. It would have been too dangerous for him. And, and there are no links to that. You can't find anything. Now, the failed Bay of Pigs, well, basically, he was, his spy, he had a spy network in the US, right? So he had many Cuban, because there are many Cuban exiles. After Batista was removed from power, a lot of the crooks, but a lot of people who didn't like Castro's policies, immigrated to to Miami and to Florida, and there's still a large Cuban population there. So they go there, but within that group, there are spies for Castro. So he often knew about hits that would take place against him through his own little ring of spies, and that it would get back to him. So he probably knew that the Bay of Pigs was coming and was ready for it, and was probably surprised by how weak it was.
Question from Russell Neal. Don't forget, there's not just the grassy knoll. There's a gutter which had an escape route. What are your thoughts, Paul?
I spoke with Steve Jaffe, who was an assistant, and I met Steve of Garrison's, and he actually went in that gutter, and you can see pictures of him going in that gutter. And it's an interesting angle. I've seen the gutter too. I mean, I didn't go into it, but I've seen where it's at, and it's an interesting angle. I think that most people in the community don't think the shots came from there. At least there's, not sufficient evidence of that. If you look at where the evidence seems the strongest is the grassy knoll and the picket fence, behind the picket fence. I've been there too, and I looked at the angle, and how you would see the motorcade approach. Really interesting. But the key witness there is a guy called Samuel Holland. Samuel Holland was on an overpass in front of the motorcade with 6 other people. And right after the shots rang out, they saw smoke close to the ground coming from the grassy knoll and hovering over the street. And the passengers, I think even Jackie Kennedy, but Yarborough, I think, also was in there, smelled gunpowder. They smelled gunpowder, and they also, some of the people noticed the smoke there. So the most evident place really is, the grassy knoll. Other interesting thing, and it's an incredible picture. A guy called Tink Thompson. He looked at the Mormon picture. The Mormon picture is a picture Polaroided that was taken almost when the fatal shot occurred, and you capture the grassy knoll. And there's a protrusion over the fence in that picture, small protrusion. And there's no tree there or anything like that. And when Tink Thompson brought Sam Holland, he says, position yourself